Lesson 7-1, multiplication property of exponents. A little bit about with terms and product of powers. A monomial is just a number or variable or a product of a number and one or more variables. You're going to see a lot of monomials in this lesson. It has only one term in it. And the term a to the fourth is an example of a monomial. You'll notice that the 4 is an exponent on the base of a. The expression that involves division by a variable is not a monomial. So keep that in mind. So the term AB divided by C is not a monomial. And then properties of exponents, also called laws of exponents, can be used to simplify expressions involving monomials. So the product of powers, what does that mean? It says to multiply two powers that have the same base, you would just add their exponents. So if I have a to the m power times a to the p power, that would be the same thing as saying a raised to the m plus p power. So b squared times b to the fourth would be b to the 2 plus 4 power, or b to the 6th. So just remember, when you multiply like bases, you add the exponents. So our example here, we have two monomials that we're multiplying. So I'm multiplying the numbers times numbers. So 3 times 4 gives us 12. And then n to the fourth times n to the 7th. I add the exponents, so that would be n to the 11th. Letter B, multiply the coefficients, so that would give us 14. And I have x's and y's. X to the first times x to the fourth would be x to the 5th. And then x squared times x cubed would be x to the 5th. Letter C here, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And then I got n's, so 3 plus 5 would give us 8. And letter D, 3 times 9 is 27. I have x's and I have y's, so x squared times x cubed is x to the 5th. And y to the 5th times y to the 10th would give us y to the 15th. Next example. With a word problem, the fastest recorded star in the Milky Way galaxy is US 708, which travels 2,700,000 miles per hour. How far does US 708 travel in 1 year? Notation, and then round to the nearest tenth. And then the hint, 1 year is the same as 8,760 hours. So the first thing we need to do is convert the speed and the number of hours in a year to scientific notation. And then we're going to use the formula d equals r times t, which just means distance equals rate times time, to approximately find how far it travels in 1 year to the nearest tenth. So to put these in scientific notation, I have 2,700,000. I need to have one decimal or one digit to the left of the decimal point, and it has to be a number bigger than 0. So I move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 2.7 times 10 to the 6th power. And then the hours here, the decimal point is here. I move it 1, 2, 3. So then I have 8.760 times 10 to the 3rd power. And if I'm using rate times time equals distance, here's our rate, here's our time. We need to find the distance. When you multiply with in scientific notation, you take the coefficients and you multiply it. So we have 2.7 times 8.760. And then we're going to multiply our powers of 10. So 10 to the 6th times 10 to the 3rd. So we're going to use our calculators. We have 2.7 times 8.760, and that gives us 23.652. This is times 10. And remember, when we multiply like bases, you add the exponents. So that's 10 to the 9th. Our answer still needs to be in scientific notation. So this is not in scientific notation, so I move it one place to the left, and that's 2.3652 times 10 to the 9th. But since we added a decimal place, I have to show that by adding one exponent here. Now we can round our answer to the nearest tenth, which would be 2.4 times 10 to the 10th. When it comes to rounding in these kinds of problems, wait till the very end to round to the nearest tenth. Next question. For an album to reach platinum status in the United States, it must sell 1 million or more copies. If an album sells 2 million copies, then it goes double platinum. At one time, the greatest number of times an album had gone platinum was 38. Approximately how many copies have the top selling albums sold in the US? Write your answer in scientific notation. So we have the number 1 million to go platinum. So this can be rewritten as 1 times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th power. And so if you go platinum, if you go sell 1 million copies, that's platinum. This one has gone 38. So if I have 38 times 1 times 10 to the 6th power, this would give us 38 times 10 to the 6th, but I need to put it in scientific notation. So here's the decimal point, move it one place to the right. It says 3.8 times 10. And I raise, since I gained a decimal place, I put a 1 there. That'd be 3.8 times 10 to the 7th. Next, typically a 4K computer monitor describes a screen with a resolution of 3840 by 2160. This means that the display's width is 3840 pixels and the height is 2160 pixels. How many pixels are there in a typical 4K computer monitor? So you can see our answers are in scientific notation. So I'm going to make all these numbers in scientific notation. So this would be 3.840 times 10 to the third. I'm going to multiply that by 2.160 times 10 to the third. When I multiply the coefficients, I have 3.840 times 2.160. That gives me an answer of 8.2944 times 10 to the 6th. My answer is in scientific notation, but they want us to write it in round to the nearest, looks like to the nearest tenth. So one decimal place, so this would be 8.3 times 10 to the 6th, which will give us choice C. Next, the power of a power property. The power of a power property says to find the power of a power, you multiply the exponents. So you're raising an exponent to an exponent. So an example, b squared raised to the 4th power, that's the same thing as saying b squared times b squared times b squared times b squared. So doing it 4 times, and when you multiply like bases, you add the exponents. So 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 is b to the 8th. So the quicker way is just doing 4 times 2, which will give you 8. Let's practice using that property. So simplify each expression. N to the 5th raised to the 3rd power is n to the 15th. I'm just multiplying those. Letter B would be x to the 8th. Letter C would be n to the 28th. 7 times 4 is 28. And the last one, x to the 30th, multiply 3 times 10. A couple more examples. This would be n to the 44th. And the last one would be x to the 21st. A negative 7 times negative 3 would give us a negative 21. Next law of exponents would be a power of a product. And what does the power of a product say? To find the power of a product, you find the power of each factor and you multiply. So for this example here, you have to raise everything to the 3rd power first, and then you multiply to simplify your answer. So let's take a look at an example. So we need to raise everything to the 5th power. So that means 3 to the 5th power, x to the fifth power, and y squared to the fifth power. And you'll notice that I'm multiplying the exponents. So now I can write my answer. 3 to the fifth power, 3 to the fifth power would give you 243. X to the 25th, y to the 10th. The letter B. I have a negative 5 here and I have to square it. That means I take negative 5 in parentheses and I square it. And then I square everything else. And I get a final answer of 25 a squared b to the 8th. Letter C, I raise everything to the third power. So this is 9 cubed. X to the negative 4th times 3, and then y to the 8th times 3. 9 cubed is 729. Then we have x to the negative 12th and y to the 24th. Now, just a side note here, technically you cannot have negative exponents in our answers. So to get rid of our negative exponents, you would really write the reciprocal of the base with a positive exponent. So really this one would equal 729 y to the 24th all over x to the positive 12. But for this lesson, we're not going to worry about negative exponents, so we can have negative exponents in our answer, but just know when you're simplifying it in the simplest form, you cannot have negative exponents in your answer. The next one, I have negative 2 raised to the fifth power, 8 to the 10th raised to the fifth power, and b to the 4th raised to the fifth power. Negative 2 to the fifth power would give us an answer of negative 32. And then we have a to the 50th, b to the 20th. And a few more examples. Here I need to raise everything to the third power, so 4 cubed is 64. This would be x to the 9th, y to the negative 6th. And letter B, negative 3 to the 6th power would give us 729, a to the negative 18th, and b to the 6th power. Now, if you really want to simplify both of these, this would be 64 x to the 9th all over y to the 6th. And this one would be 729 b to the 6th all over a to the 18th. But there'll be a lesson later on dealing with negative exponents. Example 5, with a word problem with a power of a product and area, if the side of each smaller square is x inches and the side of the whole canvas is s inches, then what is the area of the painting in terms of x? So an area of a square is s squared. Now if one side is made up of x's for each little square, I have 5 of those. So s is the same as 5x. So now if I simplify this, for s, I would put 5x here, and then I would square all those sides. I would get an area of 25 x squared square inches. And next one, a puzzle cube is solved by having all 9 squares on each face be the same color. If a face of each of the 9 squares is xy centimeters long, what is the volume of a puzzle? So a diagram might help. So if one face looks like this, you have 9 of these squares, and each one of these is xy. So I have 9 squares that are areas of xy. So I would have 9 x squared, or 9xy each side. And I'm trying to find cube of each of these. So to find volume of a cube, you just take side cubed, and if the side is 9xy, I just substitute 9xy in here and then cube everything. the volume. Actually, I have 9 squares, so the side would be 3 of these. So I would have 3 of those. So a side would be 3xy. If I cube that, that would give us 27 x cubed, y cubed, and this would be cubic units. And our last question. Aaliyah is designing an early version of a game and wants to use a cube to stand in for the character. She will design a writer. She fixes the dimensions of the cube around the height of the curve, which she defines as 1/8 x pixels, where x is the height of the total game screen. What is the volume of the cube in terms of x? So again, for cube, for finding volume, you cube everything. So if the side is 1/8 x, cube that, that would give us 1/8 cubed is 512 x cubed. We know it can't be a because that's squared. We know it can't be b because the numerator is 1, so 1 cubed is not 512. They didn't cube the 1/8, so the only answer that would make sense would be b. So that is our lesson on multiplication properties of exponents.